Do you find yourself getting angry when others cross your boundaries? Here's the truth. You don't need anger to be respected. Stoicism teaches us there's a better way, to set boundaries with calm, with conviction, and without guilt. You don't need to raise your voice to draw a line. You just need to know where that line is, and stand by it. Follow this channel if you're ready to live with strength, clarity, and self-respect every single day. 1. The boundary is yours, not theirs. One of the most dangerous illusions in modern life is this. If I'm kind enough, flexible enough, empathetic enough, others will naturally respect my boundaries. That's not wisdom. That's a setup for quiet resentment. A Stoic sees the world as it is, not as he wishes it to be. And the truth is simple, you cannot control how others act. You can only control what you allow. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Your boundary isn't a fence you build around others. It's a contract you keep with yourself. It's a clear inner line that says, this is who I am. This is what I tolerate. This is where I end, and the world begins. The mistake many men make is waiting for external permission. We wait for someone to notice we're overwhelmed. We expect others to read our discomfort like a map. We assume they'll just know when they've crossed the line. But Stoicism doesn't traffic in assumptions. It deals in clarity, discipline, conscious choice. You don't need to become aggressive to set boundaries. You don't need to raise your voice, give a speech, or seek validation. You only need to decide what you stand for, and stand there without flinching. The modern Stoic understands this. A boundary isn't about pushing others away, it's about pulling yourself back into alignment. Whether it's in your work, your relationships, or your time, if you don't define your edges, the world will do it for you. And the world isn't gentle with what it doesn't understand. Let go of the hope that others will get it. Most won't. Some will push, test, even guilt you. Your job is not to change them. Your job is to hold the line, calmly, consistently, without drama. And if they leave because of that line? Good. What's meant to remain in your life will never require you to erase yourself to keep it. You are not responsible for how others react to your truth. You are only responsible for living it. Practical action for today. Tonight, write down one situation where you felt your boundary was crossed, but you said nothing. Ask yourself, what was I afraid of? What would I say if I could go back, clearly and calmly? What will I do next time? No judgment. Just observation. Clarity is the first step toward control. 2. Saying no is not cruel, it's the most honest thing you can do. You set a line. Quietly. Finally. Not to punish. Not to prove a point. But to preserve yourself. And just when you expect peace to follow, something else creeps in. Guilt. This is the moment most men retreat. Not because their boundaries were wrong, but because they were never taught to endure the emotional backlash that often follows doing what's right for themselves. You say no, and silence follows. You decline a favor, and sense withdrawal. You take space for yourself, and someone calls you cold, changed, or selfish. Let them. This discomfort isn't a sign that you're wrong. It's a sign that you're evolving beyond the boy who needed to be liked, into the man who's willing to be misunderstood for the sake of his integrity. Seneca once said, "He who seeks approval from others is a slave to their praise and their rejection." That's not strength. That's dependence dressed as kindness. The man who cannot say no without flinching will always live at the mercy of those who can. If you think about it, how many of your past resentments were born not from what people asked, but from your inability to say no? How many days have you given away? How much energy have you spent on tasks that drained you? How many yes have you spoken, only to curse them under your breath minutes later? A Stoic doesn't waste energy resenting what he allowed. He stops the cycle. He does not agree out of guilt. He agrees out of alignment. He does not act out of fear. He acts out of principle. So no, saying no does not make you cruel. It makes you honest. And the man who is honest, with himself and with others, will lose many things in life. Comfort, approval, popularity. But he will never lose himself. Take this moment. Today. Right now. Choose one thing, one request, one offer, one expectation that you do not have the energy, capacity, or desire to say yes to. Say no. Calmly. Without over-explaining. Without apologizing. Not with arrogance, but with clarity. If the voice in your head begins to plead, they'll think less of me. They'll be hurt. I'll look selfish. Ask yourself, if I say yes now, will I still respect myself tomorrow? And if the answer is no, then your answer must be no. That's not hard-hearted. That's self-respect in practice. That's what living with principle looks like. The more you practice this, the more you will realize. You don't owe your peace to anyone who uses guilt as a tool. You don't owe access to anyone who disappears the moment you stop accommodating them. And you certainly don't owe an explanation for choosing your sanity over their comfort. Every time you say no with truth in your chest, you reinforce something sacred. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be whole. 3. If you don't define the line, someone else will. By now, you've probably felt a shift. The first no. The first moment you didn't over-explain. The first boundary you held without flinching. It feels unnatural, doesn't it? Almost like you're doing something wrong, even when deep down, you know it's right. That's the residue of a life spent prioritizing harmony over truth. But here's the truth you must let sink into your bones. If you don't define the line, someone else will. And they won't draw it in your favor. Modern life is perfectly designed to erode your inner structure, slowly, subtly, without resistance. A colleague sends a quick request on your off day. A family member calls during your sacred evening silence. A friend guilt trips you into plans you didn't agree to. None of it feels like a big deal until it's all you ever do. And by then, you're not choosing anymore. You're reacting. You're not living, you're managing. The Stoics saw this danger clearly. Marcus Aurelius warned, people who labor all their lives but have no purpose to direct every thought and impulse toward are wasting their time, even when hard at work. What he meant is simple: discipline without direction is just slavery in disguise. Every time you allow the world to define your hours, your energy, your priorities, you surrender a piece of yourself. And eventually, there's nothing left to protect. Because without a clear no, your life becomes a long, quiet yes to everyone else's agenda. But here's what a modern Stoic knows. Your peace is not built in grand gestures. It's built in small, consistent lines drawn in the sand and held. Not with defiance. Not with anger. With certainty. So here's what you're going to do. Not someday. Today. Pick one area of your life where the line is unclear. Just one. Work? Your phone? Social media? Family obligations? Time with yourself? Now, define the rule. The limit. The non-negotiable. Make it specific. Measurable. Concrete. Examples. I don't check email after 6 p.m. No exceptions. If someone raises their voice at me, I end the conversation. I keep Sunday mornings completely phone-free, no calls, no notifications, just space. Write it down. Make it real. Because when it stays vague, it stays breakable. And when you break it, even slightly, you don't just lose time. You lose trust in yourself. The Stoic doesn't need others to obey his boundaries. He needs to know he will obey them himself. That's where strength begins. Not in changing others, but in no longer betraying your own word. And here's the second part of your task. Set a simple reminder. One sentence. Stick it where you'll see it, on your mirror, lock screen, or notebook. Let it say, "No one else will draw the line. That's my job." Repeat it when the temptation comes. When the guilt starts whispering. When silence feels safer than clarity. Let it steady your hand when your voice wants to soften the truth. That line? That limit? That boundary? That's where the man begins. Not the version of you who agrees to everything. Not the version who explains away his exhaustion. Not the version who mistakes flexibility for self-erasure. The man who draws the line and lives by it. That's the man who doesn't have to yell. Because he knows exactly where he stands. And he never moves for anything that costs him his center. 4. The more you fear disappointing others, the easier it becomes to abandon yourself. You've said no. You've drawn the line. You've felt the resistance. Now comes the real test, staying with yourself when the silence gets loud. Because often, it's not what others say that makes us fold. It's what they don't. No protest. No argument. Just distance. The unread message. The change in tone. The sudden coolness from someone you were once close to. And in that moment, without a word spoken, the guilt creeps in like a fog. Did I go too far? Maybe I was too rigid. Should I call and explain? And just like that, you start bending again. You erase the line you drew. You abandon what you knew to be right, just to rescue someone else from a feeling they haven't even named out loud. Let's call this what it is. Emotional codependency disguised as empathy. And it's one of the subtlest forms of self-betrayal a man can live under. Epictetus warned of this exact trap when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things." Why? Because the moment you start organizing your life around how not to upset others, you stop living with principle and start living on a leash. You become a man in disguise. Well-liked. Cooperative. Pleasant. But hollowed out by compromise. You laugh when you're tired. You agree when you disagree. You show up when you'd rather rest, all in the name of being seen as good. But a Stoic knows true goodness has nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with alignment. Your peace is not rooted in what others feel about you. It's rooted in knowing that you no longer abandon yourself to make others more comfortable. And here's the paradox. The more you try to be easy for everyone else, the harder it becomes to live with yourself. There is a moment, and it comes for every man, where he has to choose. Would I rather disappoint them or keep disappointing myself? If you're not ready to answer that now, don't worry. The world will keep giving you chances. Overcommitment. Misunderstandings. Unspoken expectations. Moments where you're offered the easy way out. Say yes, stay quiet, avoid conflict. And every time you say yes when you mean no. Every time you choose peace on the outside at the cost of war on the inside. You reinforce the idea that your needs are optional. They're not. A man who lives from principle does not fear disapproval. He does not need to be harsh, but he is unshakable. He is the calm in the room, not the echo of other people's emotions. So here's what you're going to do. Simple. Tactical. Today. Find one place in your life where you've been saying yes out of fear of making someone uncomfortable. It could be staying in a group chat that drains you. Agreeing to weekly calls you don't want. Listening to a friend vent, but resenting every second of it. Letting your calendar get filled with favors you didn't offer. Choose one. Now pause. Don't act yet. Just write down the full cost of continuing to say yes. Not just time. Energy. Clarity. Attention. Integrity. And now ask. If I wasn't afraid of disappointing them, what would I do instead? That's your truth. That's your actual boundary. And that's where your next decision needs to come from. You don't need to defend it. You don't even need to explain it. You just need to act in accordance with it. Because every time you protect someone else's feelings at the expense of your own values, you lose just a little more trust in yourself. And trust, once lost, isn't repaired with motivation. It's rebuilt with decisions. Small ones. Consistent ones. Quiet ones. Like choosing not to return the call. Or opting out of the meeting. Or saying, "I'm not available this week." No justification. No edge. Just truth. The world may not applaud you for it. But your inner world will fall silent, and still, and strong. And that is how a man begins to rebuild the ground he stands on. 5. No one respects the man who never says enough. You think you're being patient. You think you're being generous. You think that by not reacting, not pushing back, not making things harder, you're showing strength. But here's what the world sees. A man who doesn't speak up. A man who keeps giving in. A man who absorbs more than he should without ever declaring a limit. And the truth is, no one respects that man. Not his boss. Not his partner. Not his friends. Not even himself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." A good man, by Stoic definition, is not passive. He's not agreeable to a fault. He doesn't confuse tolerance with integrity. He is firm, but never cruel. Clear, but never arrogant. And most importantly, he knows where his limit lies. When you avoid saying enough, you're not avoiding conflict. You're allowing disrespect. And people can sense it, even if they never say it out loud. Every time you stay late because you don't want to be seen as lazy. Every time you nod silently while someone oversteps. Every time you keep the peace by giving more than you're comfortable with. You teach the world something dangerous. This man doesn't require honor. He only requires convenience. The Stoics believed that self-respect isn't something you earn through external validation. It's something you build through consistent, principled action. And here's the most painful realization for many men. It's not the anger of others that breaks you. It's the quiet knowledge that you had a moment to say, "This is my edge," and you didn't. Not because you didn't feel it, but because you didn't think you had the right. But let's say this plainly. You always have the right to say enough. Even if no one else agrees. Even if it makes things uncomfortable. Especially then. Boundaries are not about being confrontational. They're about being congruent, your outer world finally matching your inner truth. And the more congruent you become, the more stable your presence. People don't mess with a man who lives in alignment. Because they can sense it. He doesn't react out of ego. But he doesn't allow disorder either. He doesn't argue. He acts. And if you want to become that kind of man, you have to accept a harsh but necessary truth. Silence is not always stoic. Sometimes, it's cowardice in disguise. And that kind of silence? It doesn't buy you peace. It buys you regret. So here's what you need to do today. Not later. Identify one situation where you've allowed something to persist too long. Something you've endured. Something you keep hoping will change on its own. Something that drains you, but you've stayed silent to keep the peace. Now name it. Call it out. And then write these 2 words under it, in bold ink. Enough now. Not in rage. Not in shame. Just with clarity. Then decide the next action, however small, that signals to yourself. I don't live in quiet resentment anymore. Cancel the meeting. Say, "I won't be joining next time." Close the door. End the conversation. Decline the call. Walk away. Do it without drama. Without cruelty. Without guilt. And watch what shifts in your posture. In your breath. In your mind. You don't need to yell. You don't need to explain. You only need to stop pretending you're okay with what you're not. That single moment of honesty, without fanfare, can recalibrate your entire life. Because when you say enough and mean it, the world listens, even if it doesn't clap. 6. Boundaries are declarations, not apologies. You've said enough. And in doing so, you've reclaimed something many men go years without touching. The power to decide what enters and exits your life. But now comes another challenge. You said no. You set the line. And they asked, why not? That's the moment you'll feel the pull. The pull to explain. To justify. To smooth it over with context, story, or compromise. Don't. You owe no one a TED Talk about your boundaries. You are not applying for a license to live in alignment. You are not negotiating a deal where your inner peace needs external approval. You are simply stating a fact. This is what I accept. This is what I don't. And that is enough. Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. This doesn't mean silence. It means clarity. Precision. Minimalism in speech, maximum in presence. Because here's what most men don't realize. The more you explain your boundary, the more you unconsciously ask for permission to keep it. And if you ask, they will negotiate. If you hesitate, they will push. If you soften, they will inch forward. This is not malice. It's human nature. Most people are not trying to violate you, they're simply following the cues you give. And when you talk too much, you teach them one thing. This is flexible. You can keep trying. But when a Stoic speaks, he speaks like a blacksmith strikes, direct, deliberate, final. He doesn't use 10 words when 3 will do. He doesn't round his edges for the sake of comfort. He doesn't insult anyone, but he never betrays himself to be liked. He just says, I won't be joining. That doesn't work for me. Not today. I have other priorities. I'm not available. No drama. No backstory. No apology. Because your boundary is not a request. It's a mirror, reflecting who you are, what you value, and what you protect. And here's the deeper truth. The world trusts the man who speaks less and holds his line more. He becomes a force, not because he dominates, but because he doesn't explain away his essence every time someone asks, why? So here's your practice, today. Pick one scenario where you're likely to over-explain. Maybe it's work. A friend. A family member. Someone you often feel the need to justify yourself to. Now prepare your next response in advance, minimalist, clean, unshakable. Not cold. Not arrogant. Just simple and clear. Write it down. Practice it once, out loud. Then use it. And when the silence follows, let it. When they question you, let them. And when the guilt starts whispering, return to this. My boundary is not a negotiation. It's a reflection of who I've chosen to be. Speak less. Live sharper. Because the man who holds his line without turning it into a monologue, he doesn't need to convince anyone. His life already speaks for him. If you've been following this path so far, the boundaries, the clarity, the self-respect, then you already know. This isn't about becoming rigid. It's about becoming real. And if this speaks to something inside you, something wordless but true, then this space was built for you. I share these reflections weekly, not for motivation, but for men who are done performing and ready to live with principle. Subscribe if you're building that kind of life. Not because you're lost, but because you've chosen not to be. 7. Silence isn't weakness. It's power contained. They say nothing. You say nothing. But everything inside you wants to break that silence. To defend. To clarify. To make sure you're not misunderstood. Because in our world, the loudest voice often wins. The one who reacts first is seen as honest. The one who stays still is seen as passive, cold, or indifferent. But a Stoic man knows something different. Something deeper. Silence is not the absence of strength. It's the sign that strength no longer needs performance. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to respond to every jab. You don't need to prove yourself every time someone doubts you. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And nothing wastes life like being pulled into battles that don't build your soul. Let others speak from emotion. Let them lash out, provoke, push, demand, accuse. You don't flinch. You don't rush. You don't explain. Not because you're scared, but because you've already won the only battle that matters. The one inside yourself. Because here's the truth. The man who is governed internally has no need to dominate externally. He watches before he acts. He listens without absorbing. He feels without letting feeling lead. This isn't detachment. It's refinement. And it's rare. Because most men mistake reaction for power. They speak before they think. They move before they understand. They fight for validation, not principle. But you've been practicing something different. You've said no. You've drawn your lines. You've stopped explaining. Now it's time to master the next step, sitting in stillness when everything in you wants to break it. That's the furnace. That's where you forge unshakable presence. Here's your practice, do it today. The next time someone says something that triggers you, anything that makes you feel the urge to speak, correct, defend, or react, pause. Not forever. Just for 5 seconds. Count it in your breath. Let the silence stretch. Let the discomfort rise and stay. You'll notice something extraordinary. That moment of silence reveals everything you need to know about yourself, about them, and about what really matters. Maybe you still speak. Maybe you walk away. Maybe you say, noted, and move on. But what you don't do is react without discipline. Because in that 5-second window, something ancient returns to you. Sovereignty. You are not a puppet pulled by the strings of other people's emotions. You are not here to fight battles that aren't yours. You are not here to validate lies with your energy. You are not here to protect your ego at the cost of your peace. You are here to act deliberately. To move from clarity. To speak only when the words serve something greater than your pride. And sometimes, they don't. Sometimes, silence is the strongest message. If you can do this just once today, in traffic, in a meeting, in conversation, you'll understand something most men never will. Silence is not retreat. It is restraint. And restraint is a higher form of strength than reaction will ever be. And if someone accuses you of being cold, distant, or emotionless, smile gently. You're not detached. You're focused. You're not passive. You're precise. And above all, you're free. 8. A clear boundary is a gift you give yourself. By now, you've stopped just reacting. You've learned to say no. To stay still. To speak only when the words are rooted in something deeper than ego. And yet, part of you still asks, is this selfish? Am I building walls? What if I'm pushing people away? It's a good question. Because every time you assert your line, there will be an echo inside you, a tension between duty and self-protection. But that's exactly where the Stoic steps in. Not to erase the doubt, but to refine it. Epictetus once said, "You don't owe anyone anything beyond your integrity." That's not a permission to be indifferent. It's a responsibility to live with structure, principle, clarity. And part of that clarity is this. A boundary isn't an act of selfishness. It's an act of preservation. Preservation of what? Your energy. Your focus. Your values. Your dignity. Let's pause on that last one, dignity. Because in modern life, we rarely use the word anymore, but we feel its absence everywhere. When your time is constantly interrupted. When people overstep, then blame you for not being open. When you're giving, performing, bending, saying yes out of obligation. You don't just lose time. You don't just lose energy. You lose the quiet knowledge that your life is yours. That's what a boundary protects. Not your schedule, your sovereignty. Not your comfort, your core. So the next time someone pushes, tests, or pokes at your line, pause and remember. This is not about them. This is about me remembering that I matter, too. Because if you don't stand for your space, your silence, your values, no one else will. Not because they're malicious, but because they're human. And humans fill whatever space is left unguarded. So here's your work today. Choose a moment in your routine where you normally overextend. Maybe it's saying yes to last-minute favors, responding to messages late at night, allowing work to bleed into your weekends, feeling obligated to explain your boundaries. Pick one. Then do the opposite, once. Not with drama. Not with a lecture. Just with self-respect. Close the laptop at the time you said you would. Don't return the message until tomorrow. Say, not today. Say, that won't work for me. Say nothing and let the silence hold. Notice how your body responds. It might be uncomfortable. That's fine. It might feel unnatural. That's expected. You're not used to choosing yourself. But you will be. And when you are, something quiet and powerful will rise within you. You'll stop seeking peace from others because you've created it inside yourself. That's what a boundary does. Not a wall. Not a rejection. Just a signal to the world and to your own soul that you are worth protecting. And when you give yourself that gift, you stop waiting for others to give it to you. 9. The people who respect your boundaries are the only ones worth keeping. You've learned to say no. You've stepped back. You've spoken less. You've reclaimed your space. Now, you're noticing something else. Some people are pulling away. Maybe they stop calling. Maybe their tone changes. Maybe they say, "You've changed." And they're right. You have. But it's not because you became cold. It's because you finally became clear. And here's the uncomfortable part of growth. When you start living in alignment, the people who were benefiting from your confusion start to disappear. This is the quiet grief of evolution. Not everyone makes it to your next chapter. Not because you're unkind, but because they were only ever close to the version of you who had no edges, no preferences, no structure, no ability to say, "This doesn't work for me." And now, you're no longer the man who lets maybe mean yes, who keeps giving just to be liked, who explains his truth until it sounds like an apology. You're not that man anymore. So some people will go. Let them. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." What he didn't say, but implied, is that you must release those who only stay close when you're small enough to be controlled. This isn't cruelty. It's clarity. There is no peace in a connection where your silence is the price of admission. There is no respect in a relationship where your boundaries are treated like inconveniences. There is no love in a space that only holds you when you're pleasing. A Stoic doesn't chase people. He doesn't guilt them into staying. He lets the boundary do the work. Because here's the deeper truth. Your boundaries are not just protecting your energy. They're curating your circle. And the ones who stay? They're not staying because it's convenient. They're staying because they see you, the real you. They respect your no. They honor your clarity. They don't need access to every part of you to love what you are. These are the people you build with. These are the ones who challenge you, not manipulate you. Who adjust, not demand. Who grow, not guilt. But you'll never meet them unless you first lose the ones who only loved your lack of boundaries. Here's what you do today, simply, quietly. Look around your life. Pick one relationship, personal or professional, that leaves you feeling smaller after every interaction. Someone who drains more than they give. Who pushes when you say stop? Who disappears when you draw a line? Now ask yourself, if I stopped softening myself for this person, would they still be here? If the answer is no, you already know what needs to happen. You don't need to send a message. You don't need a dramatic exit. You just stop performing. You stop explaining. You stop bending. You stop making room for someone who only stands close when you disappear a little to make them comfortable. And you wait. Because here's what always happens. The ones who were only there for access will vanish. The ones who were there for you will adjust. That's what boundaries reveal. Not just your strength, but their sincerity. So let the boundaries speak. Let your stillness test the waters. Let the discomfort do its job. And remember, you're not losing people. You're just finding out who was never really with you to begin with. 10. You are not responsible for saving everyone's feelings. There comes a point in every man's journey where he must make a choice. Not between right and wrong. Not between success and failure. But between authenticity and emotional servitude. You've been trained, subtly, from a young age, to manage other people's comfort. To notice the shift in someone's tone and immediately adjust yours. To absorb the tension in a room and smooth it over, even when it wasn't yours to begin with. To say yes not because you wanted to, but because saying no felt like betrayal. And maybe, for years, it worked. You were the nice guy. The mediator. The stable one. The one who always showed up, even when he had nothing left to give. But there's a cost to playing savior. It's not glory. It's erosion. You become a man who can sense everyone else's needs, except his own. A man who knows exactly how to de-escalate a situation, but not how to defend his own boundaries. A man who is always there for others, but doesn't even know where his there begins or ends. And worst of all, you begin to confuse that performance with virtue. But Epictetus didn't teach us to be agreeable. He taught us to be free. He said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. The same goes for guilt, for obligation, for the burden of managing other people's reactions. If someone feels disappointed, hurt, or upset by your truth, that feeling is theirs to hold, not yours to rescue. That doesn't mean you become indifferent. It means you become precise. You express clearly. You act cleanly. You stand firmly. And when the other person struggles with your limit, you don't rush in to cushion the blow. You don't call back to soften the message. You don't over-explain to repair their feelings. You don't shapeshift into something more digestible just to avoid being misunderstood. Because here's the paradox. The more you try to manage how others feel, the more disconnected you become from what you feel. And a man who cannot name his own inner state will always live at the mercy of others' emotions. The Stoic way is not about being unaffected. It's about choosing what deserves your emotional energy and what doesn't. So when someone tells you they're hurt by your honesty, when they flinch at your boundary, when they sulk in the face of your calm, let them. You're not being unkind. You're being congruent. You're not rejecting them. You're accepting yourself. And anyone who requires you to abandon yourself to maintain their comfort was never asking for connection. They were asking for control. Here's what you do, not someday, but this week. Choose one moment where you've been over-responsible for someone else's emotions. It could be constantly responding to passive-aggressive texts, letting someone's mood dictate your actions, apologizing when you've done nothing wrong, agreeing to something just to avoid their disappointment. Pick one. Then write this. Their feelings are real, but they are not my responsibility to fix. Sit with that sentence. Repeat it. Speak it out loud if you need to. Then act accordingly. Don't ghost. Don't punish. Don't perform. Just say what's true, clearly and cleanly, and step back. Let them feel what they feel. Let them sort it out. Because the only way they grow, and the only way you stay free, is if you stop managing what was never yours to carry in the first place. And if they leave, let them. Better a smaller circle filled with truth than a crowded room fueled by your emotional labor. You made it to the end. But this isn't a conclusion. It's a beginning. You've drawn your line. You've learned to say no. You found your silence. You've stopped explaining. You've chosen clarity over comfort. And now, you've laid down the burden of rescuing what was never yours to heal. You are no longer the man who needs to be understood at all costs. You are the man who understands himself. And from that place, you live. If this series has spoken to something wordless inside you, then don't stop here. This work doesn't end, it refines. Subscribe if you're committed to becoming a man of clarity, restraint, and quiet power. Not to be followed, but to walk beside those who've chosen the same path. And if you've made it this far, comment with one word that defines this internal shift you've started. Stillness. Clarity. Boundaries. Respect. Whatever it is, let it be your next beginning. This week, choose one thing, just one, that you've been saying yes to out of habit, fear, or guilt. And say no. Not with anger. Not with an excuse. Just calmly. Clearly. Without explanation. It might feel unnatural at first. But that single act, that simple refusal, could shift the way you live and the way others see you. Not as someone easy to sway, but as a man who lives with clarity. If this message resonates, drop a single word in the comments that defines the man you're becoming. Clarity. Sovereignty. Boundaries. Respect. Whatever it is, let it mark where the new chapter begins.